Hi, my name is Chad Ellsbury, Assistant Director with the Iowa High School Athletic Association. Welcome to this training session, Leadership in Stopping Racism and Gender Violence, presented by the Athletic Association and the Center for Violence Prevention at UNI. Today, our communities, our state, and our nation struggle to effectively address long-standing issues related to race and gender equality. Everywhere, persons of color, members of the LGBTQ community, and in some cases, women and girls feel pushed to the margins of society by dominant culture and are hopeful for positive change. As citizens, neighbors, students, friends, and family members, we owe it to ourselves to support one another and find meaningful ways to safely engage in discussions and dialogue, where all voices are heard and respected, and where barriers and walls of division can be lowered. Change is needed and necessary, but it won't happen overnight. Our facilitator for this training will be Dr. Alan Heisterkamp.
Hello, I'm Alan Heisterkamp. I'm privileged to direct the Center for Violence Prevention at the University of Northern Iowa. The mission of the center is to advance bullying and violence prevention principles and strategies within our state's educational system, as well as in our community organizations and agencies who serve youth and families. We have partnered with the Iowa High School Athletic Association on a number of student workshops about leadership and gender violence prevention. And now we are partnering together to address the issues of racial discrimination and social injustice. An emerging and important area of focus involves inviting and engaging more adults and young people, particularly those of us who identify as white or Caucasian, into the conversation around racism. One of the primary tools we utilize in all of our prevention work is the bystander approach. Equipping students and young adults with these skills to make a positive difference also empowers them to change the world in which they live each and every day. The time for these conversations is now, on our sports teams, in our schools, and in our communities.
Ultimately, these conversations will support and lead to an increase in knowledge and understanding of our current state of affairs regarding racism and gender inequality, a shared agreement that racism and gender inequality are wrong, and an increase in the number of people who actively engage as friends, classmates, teammates, and coworkers to safely confront and challenge social norms that support racism and gender inequality. But before we begin our overview of the bystander approach, here today to talk about the impact of discrimination and his experiences is David Harris, Director of Athletics at the University of Northern Iowa.
Hello, my name is David Harris, and I'm the Director of Athletics at the University of Northern Iowa. It's an honor for me to have a chance to provide an introduction to this training module dealing with gender violence and racism. For us, racism has been our nation's enduring pandemic. All of us have a responsibility to be able to work together to be able to eradicate this from our society and from our communities. For all of us, we have friends, family members, colleagues that are impacted in some form or fashion by racism or by gender-based violence. And there is an opportunity in front of all of us to be able to learn, to be able to help, and to be able to provide the guidance necessary and the education necessary that each of us can make better decisions going forward. Now, in order for this to happen, there are some things that are crucial. Number one is understanding that racism and gender-based violence have no place in our community. They have no place in our society. And it's a responsibility for all of us to make sure that we do whatever is necessary to be able to eradicate that from our society as soon as we possibly can. The other thing that I think is extremely important is that we have allies. We have people that understand that it's not up to the people who have been victimized by racism or by violence to eradicate this from our society. It takes all of us working together to be able to make this happen. So we need allies who are going to be responsible for holding their friends, their family members, their colleagues accountable for what they say and for what they do. You will hear many times people say that they're not racist. You will hear people say that they are not someone who makes certain comments, whether they are comments that promote racism or promote violence. But honestly, that's not enough. That's not enough for any of us. It's not enough to be a non-racist. We all need to be anti-racist. And that means that we have a responsibility to take action, to speak up, to do things that are necessary to make sure people understand where we stand and to hold others accountable. Now, for me and for all of us, sports play a big role in our society, and they play a big role in this area as well, because there's not a place, I believe, that does a better job of bringing people together from diverse backgrounds, from different areas of our state, from different ideologies, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, bringing together a diverse group of people to be able to work toward a common goal. But also understand that sports in and of itself isn't enough. It's about what's happening in sports. It's about the lessons that are being taught. I was a football student athlete, and I can remember being in high school, and one of the times in my life where I was actually called a racial slur was at the end of a football game in the handshake line. Now, that's a time when you're supposed to be exhibiting sportsmanship. And I had been going to battle with this particular person throughout the entire game. And at the end of the game, instead of shaking my hand, this person chose to call me a racial slur. So understand that just being involved in sports is not enough. It's about the lessons that are being taught. It's about what's being done. It's about what's being emphasized. It's about what's being shown in those situations. We each have an opportunity to make a difference in what we do and what we teach every day. So let's pull together to make the right choices. Now, understand that in this area, symbolism becomes big as well. Whether it's kneeling during the national anthem, whether it's a raised fist, whether it's a t-shirt, all of those things are important. But also understand that our work has to go beyond symbolism. It has to go to the actions that we're all responsible for taking on a daily basis to be able to move us forward. As I said, racism is our nation's enduring pandemic, and it takes the courage of all of us, the passion of all of us, the work of all of us to be able to defeat that, to be able to defeat gender-based violence. So hopefully today, with this training module, it will get you to think, it will get you to understand the issues, it will bring out the courage that each of us have to take a stand, and it will get you to treat your friends, your family members, your colleagues, and even strangers in a more supportive way, in a more understanding way, so that we can all pull together and be a better society. Enjoy the video, enjoy the training, and good luck to all of us.
Most people are not violent or abusive, but we need everyone's voice and leadership to join in on the efforts to make our homes, our schools, and our communities safe for everyone. There are more than 360 high schools in the state of Iowa, stretching from the Mississippi to the Missouri rivers. The Center for Violence Prevention and the IHSAA believe creating and supporting school and community climates that promote equality and a culture of caring for one another benefits us all. The model we will explore together is called Mentors in Violence Prevention, or MVP.
MVP doesn't focus solely on the victim-perpetrator binary, but instead utilizes a bystander approach that encourages individuals who are in a position to do something to act in a way that can acknowledge and confront harmful behaviors without compromising their own safety. During these next few minutes, I would like to share with you the key steps of the bystander approach that you can immediately apply in your everyday life, whether it's on your sports team, in your school, or within your community. We'll also explore some effective tools that you can use to confront or challenge language and behavior that falls below the standards we all expect of ourselves and from one another. But first, I'd like to say a little bit about leadership. Leadership, positive leadership, can be defined in many ways: leading by example, influence, service, role model, determination, courage, vulnerable, risk taker, powerful, caring, responsible, inspiring. There isn't just one word that totally defines it. Leadership can manifest itself in a variety of ways. Leadership is the foundation on which we speak when encouraging students, teachers, and parents to utilize the bystander approach, especially when it comes to preventing harassment or any form of social injustice. Recognizing and confronting sexist attitudes or racial bias and prejudice beliefs within ourselves and in our peer groups and friendship circles requires open and honest conversations and positive leadership. Doing so will have a profound impact on the culture and climate of our school.
When we talk about being part of a culture and climate that prevents violence, we're referring to challenging and confronting the beliefs, comments, and attitudes that are at the foundation of overt violent behaviors. The pyramid of prevention provides a clear framework of the types of behaviors we are capable of addressing and confronting. If a community, or more broadly, a society, is serious about ending harassment, assault, and all forms of violence depicted towards the top of the pyramid, our collective attention needs to be focused on reducing the attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs at the bottom of the pyramid. This is where we, as bystanders, can have the largest impact. In theory, if we reduce or eliminate the abusive language and behaviors at the bottom of the pyramid, we will see a significant reduction in the more egregious acts of violence and abuse at the top.
And just a note, there are highly skilled professionals who are trained to address the behaviors listed at the top half of the pyramid. In fact, we'll post the contact information for these community resources at the end of this presentation. If we define an empowered bystander as a friend, classmate, teammate, trusted adult, or family member, then we become part of the solution to ending violence and injustice by challenging or confronting sexist, racist, and homophobic comments within our spheres of influence. This isn't easy. If it was, we'd all be doing it now. How each of us lives out our personal definition of leadership and holds true to the values we place upon our respective relationships will likely tell us to a great deal how we might show up and respond in situations that are potentially harmful to others. Let's take a quick look at the cognitive and actionable steps we can all take as active bystanders, and then review some of the tools that we can use in our personal, social, and academic lives to make our communities safe for everyone. The first step is notice. What we notice gets our attention. Noticing or observing language, innuendos, slurs, and attitudes that portray sexist, racist, or homophobic overtones is the first step in being aware that what's going on is problematic. Oftentimes, these comments are referred to as microaggressions, that is, a derogatory or a negative prejudicial slight or insult towards any group, particularly our culturally marginalized groups. These comments and statements harm and oppress individuals in our communities. There's no place for comments of this nature, and we have to notice them when they surface, even when they occur amongst our friends, classmates, teammates, and family members. The second step has to do with interpreting. Interpreting if what we're observing is potentially harmful or not. Here's where the hard drive in our memory banks kicks in and goes back to retrieve all the recent and not so recent memories of similar situations we've previously encountered. These experiences and our reactions to them help us decide the extent to which what we're seeing and observing now really is a problem or not. How we were brought up to see the world and socialized to interact with others, how we learn right from wrong, what values and moral ethics were passed on to us by our parents, role models, and other societal influences all impact the way we view the world around us. If we come to the conclusion that what's going on is harmful or potentially abusive, the next step in our bystander thought process is to take responsibility. So here's a question. What determines for you whether or not you feel responsible to act or intervene in such a way that could possibly diffuse, distract, or disrupt a potentially abusive or harmful situation from interrupting into something more egregious and violent? If you ask folks this question, most would reply, hey, that's my friend, or my sister, or my brother, or they're from the same hometown, or hey, we're on the same team together. Of course I need to do something. Feeling responsible to get involved often has to do with how connected we are to the person being harmed or to the person causing the harm or acting in a threatening manner. Still, there are others who feel a sense of responsibility simply because they believe in their heart of hearts that what's being said or what's being done isn't right, and this kind of treatment isn't okay for anyone to experience, no matter who they are. This then leads to the fourth and final step of the bystander approach. This is where thinking ultimately leads to action. Typically, when we notice potentially harmful or abusive language or behavior, interpret and decide for ourselves that it's wrong, and feel a sense of responsibility to say or do something, we act. Here's where the rubber meets the road, and the tools I'm about to share can be applied. Just as there's not one approach to being a leader, as I mentioned earlier, there's not one best way to be an active bystander. We're all different. Our skill sets and comfort levels all are different from one another. So the tools that we use have to accommodate multiple ways of interacting and responding safely. Let's take a look at some specific ways we can all make a positive difference. Be direct. Responding directly means exactly what the word implies. Based on my skills and my relationship to the person or individuals with whom I'm directing my comments, I may say, "That's not okay. This is wrong. I can't support this. This is a bad idea." Or asking a question, how is this making the situation better? Being direct in our comments and intentions can have a profound impact on the outcome of a potential harmful situation. Plus, if you're in a group, others who also feel the same way but didn't speak up may be more likely to do so. This can actually unveil shared agreements that weren't visible and verbalized before. That's how it works. Secondly, approaching this situation indirectly or utilizing a distraction are useful tools or techniques to employ. Studies have shown that in bullying or harassing situations, when an outsider, a bystander, acts in a way to distract or disrupt the behavior by cracking a joke, changing the subject, or interfering in such a way that the tension at the moment is interrupted, the aggressive or abusive behavior is likely to stop within just a few seconds. It loses its momentum, so to speak. Oftentimes, the distraction is just enough to separate both parties, which could provide an opportunity for you and others to check in privately with your friend who was being aggressive, or with the person who was on the receiving end of the harm. This can be an effective tool if utilizing a distraction is more your style. Another tool or technique to use in situations that are particularly volatile, especially at a party or social gathering, is to engage another friend or allies. Here, 2 or more heads are better than one. Seeking the advice or support from another friend who might also be familiar with one or both parties could pay big dividends in keeping the situation from getting worse. Plus, having a group of friends working together also helps to communicate or establish the agreement that the harmful language or behavior being demonstrated is not okay. There's an approach that is actually used by a lot of folks. It's described as connecting with those involved later on or the next day. We may not have the words we'd like to say on the tip of our tongue, or even the opportunity to challenge the abusive language or behavior at the moment things surface. Or we may not be able to confront or check in with our friend or classmate who was on the receiving end of the abusive behavior immediately after it happened. But we can always circle back later and follow up by sharing what we observed. Let them know we care about them and ask them how you can help. Being a good friend or ally to someone who's been harmed, or conversely to someone who has been hurt or harmed others, is being a good friend, an active bystander. You're actually being a leader within your peer group and within our school community. Finally, protocol means utilizing the resources offered in your community, which includes, but not limited to, talking to your coach, speaking to your school counselor, using a confidential mental health counselor or victim service advocate from your community, or contacting one of your school administrators. There are also activities that student councils or sports teams or clubs can help organize, such as mental health screenings or workshops that raise awareness in your own community.
So what can you do now? What are the next steps? We encourage all of our coaches to help organize and convene small group discussions to learn and practice using the tools related to the bystander approach. You'll find resources on the Athletic Association Student Services webpage and the Center for Violence Prevention website. These resources include terms and definitions, statistics, and real-world scenarios that may be used with a team, a student council, or other group to explore social justice and implement the bystander approach.
Thank you for taking the time to view this training session. The opportunity to create change is now, and that opportunity simply takes a conscious effort to get involved and make a positive difference.